Hi, we're here with James Gerrie. He's a professor of philosophy and religious studies here at Cape Breton University, and we're going to talk artificial intelligence. Professor Gerrie also has a background in technology going back into the 80s, maybe even the 70s, and has a bit of experience in that realm that might be insightful for our discussion today and the students at Cape Breton University. Good morning.
Hi.
So, artificial intelligence is the main topic, and you teach a course in
Philosophy of mind and artificial intelligence.
artificial intelligence. So you're an expert on the subject from a philosophical point of view.
Well, I haven't taught the course too often. It's a senior course, but it's called Minds, Natural and Artificial. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And you also have a course, Technology and Society.
Yep.
Yeah, which touches on some of the same themes.
Sometimes a little bit, yeah. I tend to veer away a little bit from the most hot button technological topics of the day and look at more obscure technological issues in that course, just because.
Yeah. So we find ourselves at a point in time where we're at the precipice of the introduction of a new transformative technology, if I could put it. Would that be fair to say?
I don't know. We might be just about to enter the trough of despair in the hype cycle. But it's possible. Yeah, we might go further. Yeah.
Maybe other technologies have suffered the same sort of pessimism. Telephones and electricity and.
Yeah, I mean, if you study the history of any technology, there is usually a longer buildup than people realize, and then there's a period of usually kind of reckoning and retrenchment. And then the technology matures into something useful. Yeah,
I think that's fair to say. I guess if I look back at maybe the most recent technological introduction with the internet, there probably was, or definitely was, maybe a similar trajectory. We had the .com bubble and the crash of
Pets.com. Yeah,
Pets.com.
We got it now, I'm sure, but we didn't get it then.
No, we didn't get it then.
2003.
It took a while for us to figure things out. And maybe a while is relative historically because
we're still figuring out. But
I guess we're still figuring it. It is technology itself is transformative, and we never quite get the picture until it's maybe in the rear view mirror. But we can't change that. We're now sitting at the beginning of something, and we're steaming headlong into it. And the university and the world in general, students and faculty alike are sort of dealing with it. So what picture do you think that the students have? Let's talk about this from a student and faculty position. Where do you think the students are now with AI? Where have you seen their use and implementation, understanding of AI?
Well, I've been able to avoid some of the worst depredations of people using it to chatbots to ghostwrite by certain methods in my Tech and Society course, in essays and other things. So, I would say I've been able to kind of forestall a little bit of those experiences that some of my colleagues are feeling. In my critical thinking course, though, there are some exercises where you just have to give a little paragraph or intervene in some kind of a forum or something like that. And for a while there was a number of students who were just dumping little missives that were quite clearly coming from ChatGPT to kind of throw in their contributions to the discussion in the forums. I just kind of responded to that by saying, usually I'd say, hey, that's a really interesting point. So I thought I would find out what ChatGPT thought about it, and then I would type in what I thought they'd probably queried, and then you usually got a very similar kind of little thing back, and said, and I think you're right onto something because the ChatGPT said this, and then I would put that in, and then after a while, people stopped kind of contributing, just using ChatGPT, and just went back to kind of throwing in their own remarks.
Yeah.
And the thing was, most people didn't respond to those posts because they were kind of a lump of something or whatever, hard to digest. But that was the only major exposure that I've had, I think, so far. I think sometimes in essays, some people maybe are utilizing certainly help with their grammar and their writing to some extent, tools and so forth. But
Yeah.
Mostly their own still, for mine at least.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned that you've got some processes or some tools or some techniques that you're using to sort of assuage some of the worst problems that you could have. So, like, what might you what hints or tips might you give to, say, another professor to say, here's how you can maybe avoid some of.
Well, I've been using these for like more than a decade, I think, and they were mostly developed because of the standard problems back in the day of essay mills and the internet and people using Wikipedia or just clipping and pasting from the internet and so forth. So the techniques that I use is that I always have fresh course questions for the papers every year. I always frame them around some kind of a framing resource, TED Talk or an article or an essay by some person talking about whatever topic that I'm assigning. And then I also have very strict formats about my essays where they have to not just argue their own position, but consider thoughtful objection to their own position and the Socratic spirit, and then respond to that. So they have to kind of consider other points of view. And then I always make those papers come in on a day when we have a class discussion on the topic. So then the people who've been assigned, and I have multiple essays at the beginning of the course and at the end. So the people who have been assigned that topic are a small little group who I do their participation grade on that day, watching them. It's a smaller amount, I can keep track of them. And so all of these moving parts, I think, discourage people from saying, I'm going to just use a stock thing. They've got to respond to an article. They've got to write in this kind of specific Socratic format. They've got to then be expected to talk about it a little bit. And the topics, like I say, are always changing from semester to semester. And they're as non-generic as possible. Like, don't tell me about something, the history of something or whatever, but very specific. This person is talking about this and taking this kind of stance and saying these things. What do you think? And that just makes it harder for them.
Yeah. It's as much work to get the content out of ChatGPT when it's that specific as it is to actually do.
Yeah. I mean, somebody who was a real super master of the prompt might be able to, and my son and I have been, continuously trying experiments to see if we can kind of hit all of those kind of requirements. And, I think maybe if, like I said, you were a master, you could kind of get close. But then you're still often just stuck with something that still looks patently canned.
Yeah.
Right. So then they have to assess that risk.
Yeah. The writing style, the phraseology.
Yeah. The citation methods are all kind of a little bit weird coming out of chatbots still, I think, a little bit.
Or at
They're
least
getting better, I suppose.
At least not within the normal pattern and what the students might have exhibited.
Yeah. And the other thing, there's a final element to that methodology I have is that the people who, then the topics for the final essay and the final exam are all drawn from those class discussions, and you can't write on the two things that you've written on. And I just pick three. So you don't know what the question will be. And I say the preparation is you came to the discussion, you listened to the people who were kind of on deck. Other people can participate too, but I mean, they were on deck. And so, you're going to have to write in a place where you can't rely on the machine anyway. So,
Sure, going right back to Socrates. You're saying, come to the discussion, sit around the table, take part, and then we're going to try to evaluate you on your interpretation of that experience.
Oral is a big component of it, so that makes it kind of difficult to rely on these extenuated methods of writing.
These tools
that we can use.
Yeah. So there has been, we've had a number of discussions with some other professors and guests, and one of the suggestions was that the method we're using to teach and evaluate at this point is kind of dated, and maybe written tests and testing and as a whole might be a dated kind of element of the educational process now. If we were to blue sky this, if you were to, to sort of invent your own educational system, your own university system, what might we do in the current day in light of the technology that we have?
Gosh, I don't agree with the notion that the methods that we have are kind of out of date and archaic. I think if anything, I would emphasize more oral discussion. Just in the Socratic spirit, that's kind of the preferred method because it's real time. It's you're not able to, like I say, ghost write or have some crutch you can lean on or anything like that.
Yeah. But in a world today, we have in a world of Moodle and multiple choice questions and short answer questions. Maybe that's what the reference was towards. I mean, are those tools not quite as valuable now, or not quite as effective, as opposed to what you're talking about is to go back the Socratic method 4,000 years?
Right. So I use those tools in my online critical thinking course, but I only use them sparingly. As much as possible. I still have live lectures where I can actually, students can interject and I can talk to them and they can talk to me. And then we have the forums, which are the attempt by that digital means to try to recreate the Socratic thing where people can then ask questions and interact with each other to try to resolve the technical issues about the skills they're learning in that course. And like I say, there were some problems with that, but in general, I think it allows for a certain interactivity that can be absent sometimes. But the emphasis is on interactivity, not. I wouldn't go away from that. I think that's where we have to rediscover and re-emphasize our methods as much as possible. While taking advantage of these tools for certain. Digital tools for certain kinds of activities and things. Yeah.
What, maybe turning to the administration or the staffing side of it, the academic side. So what do you think the mood is among your peers, the other professors, in the introduction, or I guess the mass adoption and use of ChatGPT and AI? What are the professors saying?
Well, there's a lot of fear, obviously. I think some of my colleagues who hadn't, didn't have these methods in place because they were perhaps not as paranoid as I was, long-standing internet paranoia with the methods I developed. So they were taken a little bit off guard by the advent of chatbots and their ability to kind of ghostwrite for students. And so a lot of them had to scramble, I think. And they've probably developed, or I think they have developed, differing but increasingly effective methods to try to suss out or discourage or to simply move to other methods of assessment that are not prone to that kind of abuse, I guess, or temptation for students to do that. But yeah, a lot of them were taken a bit off guard, as we all were. I mean, when the chatbot finally came on the scene, ChatGPT, that actually worked. I think the whole AI phenomenon kind of grew out of that, wonder of like, hey, this kind of hoped for realization of a machine that can kind of interact and speak on the same level of like us that Turing had proposed as a test for like presence of intelligence. We finally got that happening. Right, and so a lot of people were kind of blown away by that. Now, in my course on Minds Natural and Artificial, we had actually been doing that course before the kind of AI explosion occurred, and one of the first assignments I had in that was doing an exercise to go out and find some of the kind of early chatbots that were kind of coming online at the time, but they were all kind of universally very limited and kind of poor, and people, would give me reports on their experience. Did they feel it was like Turing's test? They were actually kind of interacting with something that had intelligence. And most people's response was no. It flubbed this, it flubbed that, but then all of a sudden the kind of level just kicked up, and they were not making the horrible mistakes that they had been.
Yeah.
And they were offered free. So
yeah. And technology has that capacity. It often improves exponentially.
Yeah, it can take leaps.
Yeah, and we're more linear as a as a species,
being,
being. So we see these rapid changes as monumental and disturbing.
Right. But I had been, like you said, I had some experience with computers all the way back, not to the 70s, but to the early 80s. I was playing with some of the early primitive chatbots, like the famous Eliza program and so forth.
Hammurabi's code and
Hammurabi, and where you would interact textually, even in the most simple ways. And people could, who were interested in programming at that time could see where you wanted to go.
Yeah.
And the promised land was just, well, if we had access to a whole bunch of data that we could process and or use as a model or something like that, we could make this better. But the machines weren't capable of that at the time, and there just wasn't the data. But then the internet came along and gave a cornucopia of that.
To give those older machines and software their due, I mean, they were dealing with 4K of RAM and
right
and 8 colors on a screen and
right.
And even at that, I go back to Hammurabi's code. If anyone's familiar with it, you're given a world where you have to govern, I guess it's a city, Mesopotamian city, and you get to feed your population and go to war, and so you get some very simple inputs. But it at least started that human computer interaction with very primitive technology. We've come a long way, and in many cases. We've. It's arguable that in many cases, we have reached the level of not being able to discern, at least at a distance, the difference between a competent chatbot and another human being. I've seen a lot of great examples of that. One today I watched a little earlier was a test that one of these YouTube influencers was doing, and he's a mechanic, so he was using ChatGPT to diagnose a BMW car that wasn't starting. And he literally explained the symptoms into the car, and this very human, conversational female voice came back and was very chatty and said, "Try this, try this, try that." And if I didn't know better, I would have thought I was conversing with a 25, 30-year-old. Technology's come a long way. Is it possible that we're not giving enough credit to where the technology is right now? Like, do we have this presupposition of human superiority that is not necessarily as valid as it once was?
Well, I would say
how much is our ego playing into our evaluation of where the technology is?
Any skepticism of it? Yeah. Well, I'd say there's probably a little bit of that, but it's also probably justifiable to. I am in general what's called an AI skeptic. I don't see there being a major leap actually to artificial general intelligence going to be happening next week or something like that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the systems that we have developed are doing pretty amazing things, and that can't be downplayed. And so, yeah, I'd say expect major impacts, regardless of whether or not we're going to have Commander data next week or not.
Yeah. On the practical viewpoint, and in my discussions with people, I'll often, the opinion I often get is, "Oh, computers are amazing, AI is amazing, but they could never do what I can do." And I sometimes see that as a little bit of hubris wrapped up in that. As I watch technology piece by piece sometimes disassemble someone's occupation or someone's role and overtake it.
No, I would
there's
agree.
a big fear, right? There's I think where people are coming from in general is how is this going to affect me?
Yeah.
So how does that affect us in an academic level where our value is wrapped around the knowledge that we have and the expertise on a subject? And now we're sort of competing with an entity that has at its fingertips the world's collection of knowledge on any topic.
Yeah. No, I'd say we are going to have a great scythe going through probably the middle management and white-collar workers that is at least parallel to the last 40 years scything through the industrial labor force. It's dropped from about 30% down to something around 10% or lower in most industrial societies over the last 40 years. And most of those people who were affected by that have moved into white collar. But now I think we can definitely expect that the software revolutions that we're going through right now will now, and in a way, I think the use of the term artificial intelligence is potentially just a kind of a smokescreen for the unveiling of that new project of now automating vast areas of white collar work, including potentially work, a lot of work like I do. I mean, there's certainly things that computers can't do, I would think, that of my work, but there is large amounts that they can do. But it doesn't even really, we don't even have to really think in terms of AI. I mean, if you simply have somebody who is a great professor and who cans their lectures, right, and then have legions of lower paid marking assistants or something like that, that person's work can now be digitized and then effectively maybe large amounts of the marking handed over to a machine if you're using tools like multiple choice and short answer and look for keywords kind of stuff, which you can already do just using good old Moodle here if you want to put in the time to program that in. But yeah, I mean, AI will just make that simpler and easier. So yeah, I mean, large amounts of white collar work is gonna go, and it's already been going for some time. But
yeah, some of these trends are not necessarily new, as you said.
No.
I mean, the automation revolution, if I could call it that, is at least almost a century old at this point. If you really want to look back at the large influence that technology and robots have had on the manufacturing process.
Yeah, I think, I mean, robots in particular is like the last 40 years kind of a thing. And I mean, a lot of people are unaware of this. I mean, we still tend to blame globalization for the lack of, or for deindustrialization. But the data is quite clear that 80-90% of the work that disappeared over the last 40 years in industrialized societies went to automation, not overseas until the last decade or so. And in effect, really, that was a phenomenon that occurred because precisely people's buying power had been so devastated by the prior automation deindustrialization that we, in a certain sense, then offshored a lot of other work, but that allowed us to then get back and return cheaper goods. That allowed for the kind of the bump of that automation to be leveled out a bit, right? I mean, we all got, $5 and $10 T-shirts, for the last decade or so to make our kind of stagnant incomes go further. Yeah. So in a certain sense, globalization was a kind of a backstop to automation.
Yeah,
in the working setting.
One of the quotes I heard in terms of deglobalization was that we all got cheap avocados, but we lost the shoe store or the shoe manufacturing plant that used to be in the Midwest.
Right.
So we've seen drastic changes economically due to deglobalization, and the perception was, I guess, perhaps that was automation as well. So there's a whole system there. How does AI factor into that? If we look at that past from a manufacturing point of view, now we've got the machine that does intellectual work for us.
Yeah.
How does that directly impact the outlook for, say, our students that are graduating and looking to compete in the workforce? What do they have to look to?
Well, I mean, if you take some of the most dire predictions, they might have a much harder time of it. I mean, the only because of really what we did was we went from agricultural society to industrial society, and the industrial sector soaked up all of the people kicked out of the efficiency of the second and kind of agricultural revolution. Lucky. And then now we've kind of shrunk the industrial sector, but we had the kind of the security of what we thought was intellectual labor that would be completely human till the end of time. But it turns out that we might be able to get that. And the question is, what is the fourth sector now that will soak up, if we use automation techniques like AI, I think is for white collar work? what will be the fourth sector? And that's kind of an unknown. It's, I don't know, web page design, influencer, and so forth. But all of those are kind of, as it's sometimes called, boutique occupations. Only a few people can be highly successful in those, but the vast majority of people will not. They're not mass laborers. Like industrial labor was mass labor. White-collar labor of the late 20th century was mass labor. Is the new digital economy a mass labor thing? And it's not entirely clear that it could fill that role. So it could be very dire for young people. That being said, of course, we're facing demographic crises where we are just not going to have workers. So that might be offset, that lack of mass labor, some new mass labor field might be offset to some extent by the oncoming demographic crisis of contraction in population that we hadn't anticipated, but is now coming probably by the end of the century. And that's maybe a good reason to have automation, right? Fewer people to do the work, but we have machines to help us. So it's hard to say.
I mean, on that note, humans have been notoriously awful at predicting the future, and the Ehrlichian outlook of too many people and not being able to feed them is obviously proved to be wrong.
Right.
So how are we different now, looking at the future, saying, "Oh gosh, now we're not going to have enough people. We need the automation and the technology." Are those predictions likely to be any more?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right to be cautious. I mean, there's lots of voices calling for a jobless future, but that's happened historically many, many, many times and turned out always to be wrong. That being said, it could be that this time is truly different. That the Luddites were kind of presumptuous that there wasn't going to be a new thing for them to do in an industrialized world, but there turned out to be. But this time when people are saying, hey, we're going to deindustrialize, or we're going to automate all of the white-collar field, what will be there? Maybe they're just chicken littles, but maybe not.
Yeah.
As we've learned in the environment, sometimes you reach thresholds that truly are insurmountable. They're not negotiable. Yeah.
We tend to evaluate or predict the future based on what our present situation or our historical reference has been, and and again that leads us to make some pretty inaccurate predictions. If you had a student that you were talking to now and they were looking for career advice or some direction, what would you give them? What would you say to someone who was looking at starting their career today?
Gee, at one point or another, I would have said, well, then you want to be part of the wave, so be a computer programmer and ride the kind of software wave. But a lot of the emphasis in artificial intelligence is to automate the programming process. So I don't think that's the kind of necessary, secure kind of field to be in. All the experts are saying things like helping professions, medical work and so forth are maybe going to be hard to fully automate as such. So I would recommend those fields. But in general, I would always just tell somebody to follow your heart, because you need to enjoy what you're doing if you're going to succeed at it. So. And being successful, it's going to be a competitive world. So you want to set yourself up for success. Yeah, don't work against your own inclinations. Trades hard to automate, and in a lot of ways,
Yeah. If I look at maybe the trajectory for Canada, I mean, we've talked about globalization, deglobalization a little bit here, some changes in the economy, and Nova Scotia, Cape Breton, Canada exists in this global ecosystem. Most of the tools that we have now are foreign. They're primarily U.S. mega corporations that have developed our Metas and our Googles and our ChatGPTs. What should we be doing, you think, as a country in order to maintain our relevancy I think you've talked in the past in one of your classes about digital haves and have-nots. With AI, are we at risk of being a have-not?
I mean, there's some talk about digital independence or self-sufficiency of countries and so forth. The Americans have a very dynamic economy and always have traditionally been a kind of, at least in the last decades or the last centuries, a center point of technological change. So I think there's a lot of positives that can come from that kind of change. But I think one of the underlying facts of AI that I think is often emphasized is how much energy it requires and will require. It's already influencing regular electric rates in the United States for, paying for or providing the electricity of server farms and so forth that are, powering the AI revolution. So it's already affecting that. And we know that the titans of Silicon Valley are trying to get measures in place publicly to support increased energy productions that they know are necessary for pushing AI to the new level that they're going to need if it's going to actually kind of fulfill its promises of potentially getting to something close to artificial general intelligence. You need to have not just processing large amounts of the internet to kind of repackage and pass back to us or whatever. You're going to have the machines being able to play in their own vast virtual playgrounds to create their own artificial data sets to then train themselves further and further and further on if they're going to be able to start solving their own solving completely original problems in profoundly new discovery kind of ways. They're going to need those vast virtual worlds to be able to do that kind of machine learning. And as we know, it's a hard time to be talking about, hey, let's uptick the energy levels of our society when we're saying, hey, we need to kind of conserve. So this is the other thing I would say for all students, if you're looking for like a future of work. The future of our society is, of course, one where we're considering the need to decarbonize. So the energy field is where I would probably most direct students to go to, and I would direct our country to go to. If we want to be a part of if we want to encourage the continued revolution in AI, only countries that have very robust and potentially even growing energy will be able to fully participate in that. And perhaps that's why the Americans have been at the lead. I mean, they are the country that consumes 40% of the planet's energy every year. So they've used that to kind of lead these kinds of developments. But there's maybe a reckoning and a reconsideration that will, in a certain sense, set some limits to this that have relation to the environmental crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think we talked before about collapses historically, social collapses. And one of the limits that you might have, I think, if I recall correctly, pointed to were, society has just run out of energy.
Mm-hmm.
You're the farming society, you keep depleting the earth you're growing in, and you keep having to move your farm further and further from your population center. And at a certain point, you just can't do it.
Right.
Is it a similar situation? The modern version of this is that we have fewer people, but we're consuming more energy because we're relying on these advanced technologies.
Yeah, I mean, the AI revolution is taking place at a time when we are also, people are seriously considering these theories of societal collapse. The best of which all, as you say, point to energy being the kind of key resource or our energy technologies are the key drivers of all progress. And if they become problematic, then progress becomes problematic. So both of those are kind of unfolding in the same time period. And it's not clear yet whether or not we're going to be able to surmount the energy crisis that we have and continue on a trajectory of progress like we've had for the last 200 years, kind of basically fueled by carbon, if we don't have energy sources that are of the same intensity and ease of access as those that we can get online, then that might just set practical limits to the AI revolution. Yeah.
And then we're back to farming. All of a sudden, if we don't have
the
energy that we need to...
If real collapse occurs, then we're probably back to something much worse than becoming farmers. Yeah.
Well, that's a positive note to end on.
Sure.
This has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed it.
Okay.
Any final words? Anything I haven't asked you about AI that you think is worth talking about, or?
There is the kind of, even if we can get it working, there are all the ethical issues about its limitation, how we can protect against something that reaches a level of intelligence as us. Like I say, I'm a skeptic about those kinds of things, though, so I don't think that that's a real issue. But it's one that certainly lots of people want to talk about. Is machines coming to kill us once they come to understand themselves as in a conscious way or something like that.
And they see us as a nuisance.
A
plague on the planet.
So, I was a bit dour there about the environment, but I would be more upbeat about saying I don't think that's going to happen, right? So you don't have to worry about the machines, the Terminator machines coming to get us.
Professor Gerrie, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.